I look at 4 vital criteria to help understand a new officer's status in the meta. First, we examine an officer's potential to provide crowd control through their ultimate abilities. Then, we consider range, as the result of a battle can easily be determined by officers with extended reach. Strong ultimate damage is our third criterion, as some ultimates may be capable of killing an officer from max health. Lastly, we delve into whether an officer is user-friendly or specialized, as accessibility can determine your success on the battlefield. Zhang Jiao reigns supreme with a perfect score across all categories. His ultimate does insane damage to any officer. One reason is that each attack stacks vulnerability up to 3x, which increases damage. His ultimate slows the enemy and has a pretty extensive range. The further you are, the less damage you take. Generally, you want to use it when the enemy is stunned or doesn't have a flash to escape. Genji's ultimate is strong. Her ultimate's range is insane. On contact, it slows the enemy even if the enemy is immune to CC, and then freezes them after about 1.5 seconds. The damage in itself is pretty decent. Usually, you use Genji as a lieutenant for the CC and unleash your Chief's combo. Zhang Liao earns high praise for his exceptional crowd control capabilities, strong damage output, and stacking vulnerability. While his ultimate's range is somewhat limited, you typically use it at melee range where the stun is near instant. It's extremely difficult to react to a Zhang Liao ultimate and avoid it. After stunning, the follow-up with the chief officer is what you're aiming for. Daikan's ultimate is very strong damage-wise, but must be at melee range. She works extremely well with a lot of strong officers who get close and personal, including Lubu, Huang Yuing, and Cao. After a couple of hits, she charms the enemy, making them unable to use skills or switch. And then following up with skills from the chief officer is an easy way to finish off the combo. Gan Ning is another S-tier officer with good crowd control and ultimate damage. His ultimate is similar to Zhang Liao's, except that it's not an instant stun. After a half second or second of using it against the enemy, it sucks them into the middle of a whirlpool, where if the enemy doesn't move or flash, they get stunned. The initial gravity pull to the middle is good for initiating combos. Also, you can use officers like Lubu or Gen Ji to CC them so they stay in the middle and eventually get another stun off. Sun Jian secures an S-tier spot with good crowd control and ultimate damage. What crowd control does he have? Here's a tip you might not know about his Tiger. His attack stacks vulnerability, so the enemy takes more damage per hit. But did you know after 5 stacks, the 6th stack is a guaranteed stun? The Tiger follows the enemy as long as you are within a reasonable range, which is quite large, so he's quite user-friendly. His damage is good. The only drawback here is that people have learned how to kill it quickly. So the best practice isn't to use him when the enemy has no cooldowns. The best use would probably be to use him as a distraction to get close with your chief officer. Cao lands in the A+ tier due to his excellent crowd control and respectable ultimate damage. His range is moderate and you need to aim it properly. Once aimed, he stuns after a few sword hits and stacks vulnerability with each hit. His damage is pretty good. Sun Shangxiang's ultimate damage is top-notch and she's user-friendly. However, her crowd control is limited, and she relies on getting up close and personal. Her ultimate is best set up with the enemy already stunned, so that her ultimate can do massive damage and keep the stun chain going. Huang Zhong may have limited crowd control, but he compensates with exceptional ultimate damage and user-friendliness. I used to think he was pretty bad as a lieutenant, but he can work well. Each hit does good damage, and it's a skill that follows the enemy wherever they move. Of course, they can just flash and be out of range, but then you're probably not using it effectively. He excels in specific situations such as when the enemy is CC'd, no flash is available, or no switch is available. I've been recently using him with Pang Tong as chief for fun. Huang Yuing boasts an impressive range, but falls short in crowd control and ultimate damage. Her ultimate damage does good damage if all 5 turrets hit the enemy, but the issue is that rarely will that happen. The explosion time takes about a second after contacting the enemy. So you would just flash away while it's about to explode and avoid damage. You have to use her ultimate in specific moments to be useful. Her abilities are somewhat challenging to master, placing her in a specialized role. Zhuge Liang's crowd control and ultimate damage are strong, and his range is good. But the issue is, why would you not just use him as a chief officer? If you're messing around and having fun, yeah, you could get away with him as a lieutenant, but just keep him as a chief. You know you want that easy win. Zhou Yu's crowd control and ultimate damage are pretty lackluster. While he has a decent range, there are so many better choices for lieutenants. Just keep him as a chief officer, no reason not to. Zhang Fei's is an interesting one. I placed him here because with very specific officers including Sun Shangxiang, Huang Yuing and Cao, his damage is surprisingly very good. It rivals some map 20+, especially good if you're newer to the game. Taishi Ci falls into the F tier because his damage is a joke. As far as I'm aware, his ultimate doesn't cause any knockdowns, and it's extremely difficult to use. Cao Ren's ultimate has okay damage if you're free to play or just starting the game out. Mostly just mentioning him for the new players. Zhou Yun's decent as chief, but his damage is pretty abysmal as a lieutenant. The enemy can literally walk away from his attack unfazed. Liu Bu's damage is surprisingly pretty good as lieutenant. But let's be honest, if you have him, you're gonna use him as a chief. Maybe if more App 22 comes out, we can test his viability then. Guozhai is top tier as chief but pitiful as lieutenant. His range is small, and it's too hard to get that perfect scenario that you can. His ultimate. It takes too long to be useful as a lieutenant. Damage is pretty weak. Guan Yu's crowd control and ultimate damage are minimal, and his range is limited. He's not the most versatile officer as a lieutenant. Plenty better options. Pang Tong's ultimate is such a joke. He just walks straight forward and uses his Phoenix shotgun or whatever. The enemy literally just needs to walk away or flash and take no damage. If Pang Tong chased the enemy and slowed them heavily, then maybe he'd be a bit better. Follow for more Dynasty Legends 2 videos. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to see.